We also visited with Sunward, the one of the porphyry contenders in Colombia, and spoke with the company about the plans and I guess what differentiates or what are some of the drivers that they're looking at in terms of advancing their the project there. Do you recall who we talked to? We had Brenda's card, but I know it wasn't Brenda.
I also have Brenda's card, but that definitely was. Well, I don't know if it was definitely not a Brenda. I don't think so.
Well, it was the president and founder. Off the top of my head, I can't remember. Apologize for drawing a blank on the name, but I was actually pretty impressed.
Out of cards. He was out of cards. No problem.
Yeah, he was out of cards, which is probably a good sign that he had them all out. But no, I was pretty impressed with again, I like the practicality. He was pretty practical about what it takes and what you have to do, and especially the large porphyry deposits. It's going to take a larger.
Wasn't it David Forrest?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah, David Forrest. Yeah, thanks, sir. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was right. Yeah, I know it's Dave. I thought it was David, so that's got to be right, David Forrest. Well, we haven't talked to them before. I kind of looked at Sunward in the scheme of the other, Colombian gold and then porphyry plays, and it does sound.
They have 500,000 ounces of oxide cap, or whatever, could be built for.
Right, that was one of the. Well, that was one of the points. Yeah, I guess the main thing is though, and you've got some weird feedback now on your microphone, but the main thing was the, obviously their approach to the deposit, the community relations. One of the things they looked at when they were picking up an asset, and it wasn't. I don't think their approach was Colombia specific, but they wanted something with good infrastructure, something that was relatively easy in terms of the geometry of the deposit, in relation to kind of local community and water and all those kind of things and elevation. So that's I think why they went on this one, and obviously size. And I haven't looked that carefully on some of the other ones other than like La Colosa, which is the Anglo thing in terms of the opposition and things and why there's opposition there. But, this one, Marmotto, obviously, that they have to kind of move part of the community off the mountain in order to mine it. And there's some resistance to that, and maybe some of that is related to not really sort of a sense of community other than just, hey, I want to be compensated for the inconvenience. Well, I think it's more than inconvenience when you're being moved from your ancestral home, but anyway, the point is that you have to deal with people's lives changing substantially. This deposit didn't seem like was going to have that intense an issue in terms of that, right? I mean, and they have some options. I guess they talked about, could we maintain the ridge line if we mine from the other side of the mountain so that, really the town doesn't directly face the impacts of having a big open pit mine, up the hill from them every single day. So they're looking at that potential. Of course, this oxide thing you mentioned, which I think is one maybe that separates it from some of the other deposits, that they have a leach cap or something else on top that has oxide gold with relatively low copper, that they could just run as a regular, oxide leach or heap leach type operation. Now that's closer to the town. That would affect, obviously the mountaintop a little bit more. Well, not obviously, but this where he was pointing out was the top of the mountain, real close to the town.
Was it even a couple million ounces? I couldn't remember. But
I thought maybe he said the entire project had the potential of 3 million ounces of that type, which would be obviously pretty major. I don't think it was. I don't know if it was. He meant. I'll have to look at this a little bit more. If that was actually the whole resource that was that he thought was already that way. I doubt it. I thought that was a few 100,000 ounces on that cap of the mountain, and maybe some more off on the main part of where the main sulfide resource is. But anyway, so the point about this is simply that there's flexibility. That other than this being a $1 billion typical porphyry, gold copper large scale mine, But another option is to mine this on, just the near surface oxides. I mean, Rio Alto, right, would be the example of how that would look. And clearly they were able to do something. Now I think maybe their infrastructure or whatever, or the land situation was probably more amenable even than this, but and Peru, so there's different things there, but that is, again, talking about the flexibility, you just don't have to rely on someone buying you out for a massive copper project. Because Sunward Resources is not going to be putting this mine into production. I mean, this is, clearly it's large enough, and it would be a major mining company, gold company, or one of the diversified miners that would potentially come in here. But he did talk a lot about, hey, having this be an easy-looking project, because I think there's enough headaches with any kind of mine that you want to minimize all these infrastructure and location challenges you can. So I think that's to their credit. I think that's a very strong aspect of their selection and development process is that they have probably fewer issues than some of the other local projects, and seems like good community relations. So, interesting. Okay. I was saying, do you have anything else that you thought was worthwhile to mention about that?
I mean, no. I thought it was quite compelling. If the oxide cap, if that's potentially millions of ounces developed for maybe 100 million, or I don't know what figures he was throwing around exactly, but
it was in that range, I think. I mean,
but the stocks held up really well, and a strong institutional. I got the Electrum group, and looks like Paulson as well. Maybe to a smaller extent.
All right. Well, so we talked about that again. We get the same theme of pretty strong, strong shareholder base, institutional or whatever, private wealth, whatever it is. But you don't want hot money. And the point that people make for institutions is that they're willing to stay the longer term and don't get the pressure. But if it's the institution as an investment fund that has redemptions, then that doesn't work that way. So, but I think this one is one of those where they probably have. Well, Paulson, I don't know as much, but Kaplan, the Electrum Group, I think is certainly strong hands. Right?
A larger holder.
Right. Okay, so this is one we'd look probably a little bit more into as well, especially if the oxide, if that could be some additional consideration or flexibility on the oxide stuff. I mean, Rio Alto, I think, in a different setting in Peru, has kind of led the way. Hey, you don't have to be a multi-billion-dollar thing. I mean, it's going to cost them a lot of money to build a plant to process sulfides on the underlying mineralization. But if you can make a bunch of money, mining the oxides, which they're making good money now already, and they've got some ways to go still until they're finished with that, you could potentially fund a large portion of building the main plant. So, okay, let's move on to